Everyone, looks like we're in for an intimate evening this morning, almost feels like a small soiree. Thanks for joining us and thanks to everyone online. This is a meeting of Frome Town Council. I'm Sarah Butler and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. Just to remind everyone, we do have people online, so if you are speaking, please speak into the microphone, which is on your table, and please remember to turn it on first as well. A little bit of housekeeping. The emergency exit is in the corner of the room over there to my right, and the assembly point is in the far side of the car park. There are toilets at the end of the corridor on the right, and accessible toilet to the right of the lift just outside. Tea and coffee on the side, please do help yourself. Paul is clerking, Laura is taking notes, and Sarah and Rachel are managing the message board and also handling the IT. If you are attending by Zoom, councillors and otherwise, please use your yellow button hand to say that you want to make a point, or if you're in the room, just raise your hand. Okay, first on the agenda is apologies for absence, and we have so far Steve Tanner, Polly Lamb and Lisa Merriweather, although there's definitely a few empty seats here. We need to vote to accept the apologies, so can I raise for that? Accepting, I'm proposing, yeah.
Seconder.
Sorry, seconder Nick.
And I think that's unanimous.
Thank you. And we also need to vote on approving the minutes for the last meeting. Sorry, Fiona.
I didn't present on school streets. I am very happy to be included on it, but I did not present on it. So that was just a factual error.
Oh, okay, I see, on the minutes.
Yeah,
okay, that's fine. We'll get that corrected. Thanks, Fiona.
So the other thing on those minutes, it was a little unclear, the terminology about who was actually absent and who was absent but on Zoom. I did raise it with Paul just to clarify that.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy and Fiona, for both those, really helpful. I propose on the latter one, which is the minute 1A on the very first page, sort of apologies from Polly Lamb and from Anne Hills, who attended on Zoom. So inserting a from prior to Anne Hills' name. And I'll cross out Fiona's name on the school streets item. Are you, so two things, so someone to propose that and second it, but also at the same time to okay the changes to be initialed by Sarah.
Okay, so Andy to propose those changes, Fiona to second, everyone agree? Yep. Unanimous, and then to accept with amendments the minutes of the last meeting, and to propose Philip to second. Thank you. Okay, so first on our agenda this evening is a presentation from Neighbourhood Police Inspector Matthew Reid. Matthew, thank you very much for giving us your time. Welcome to Frome Town Council's meeting.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, members of the community, councillors.
I might need to turn the mic on. That's it.
Right, we're on. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, councillors and members of the community as well. I thought I'd start this evening just by introducing myself and then taking you through some information about the constabulary as a whole, just to kind of refresh information about that, and then some local context as well. And then if we've got time, happy to take some questions or take any questions away if I haven't got the answer this evening. And I'm hoping, and maybe, we might just need to collapse one of the screens in front of the presentation. It's there somewhere.
Technical glitches.
Perfect, there we go. Thank you very much. It's usually me having problems with technology. So good evening, I am Matthew Reid. I'm the relatively new police inspector for the Mendip neighbourhood policing team, having been posted in August. It's my strong belief that our communities are served best when all the public bodies work together on challenges and issues. That's why I'm very grateful for your invitation to present to you this evening. Next year will see my 20th year in the police. I've worked in 2 forces, traffic, CID, patrol, now neighbourhoods. So I hope my kind of breadth of experience in policing will improve the quality of the service we provide in the area. As I said, I'll start with updating you with where Avon and Somerset is as a constabulary as a whole. So give some context to the parameters in which we work locally in serving our communities, and then I'll move on to some detail regarding Frome itself. So at the top, you'll probably be aware that the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner is an entirely independent organisation of the constabulary. The PCC sets the, sorry, I've got to remember to keep up on the slide in there because I'm working on two screens. There we go. So the PCC sets the strategy for and direction for the constabulary, and he publishes this in the Police and Crime Plan, which is available online for all to see. He holds the Chief Constable to account to deliver the objectives of that plan, and here you can see the 4 overarching areas included in it. I'll move on to the workings of the neighbourhood policing team a little bit later, but you'll see how our work reflects these core principles. So, it's not my clicker. There we go. So the Chief Constable, Sarah Crew, has operational control of the force and, as already mentioned, is responsible for delivering the objectives of the Police and Crime Plan. The police service is experiencing a difficult time. There's no getting around that. Austerity measures from 2010 saw a significant reduction in police budgets and the resultant reduction in police officer and police staff numbers. We are rebuilding, but this in itself brings challenges. And then more recently, we've also seen the abhorrent behaviour of officers elsewhere in the country, including in the paper again yesterday. And this has brought into question the model of policing by consent, which is the very basis on which we were founded. No one is more upset and crossed by these things than the vast majority of us who are on the good side. But ultimately, the confidence in the police has been significantly undermined as a result of some of those national issues. So in response to these challenges, the Chief Constable set out a very clear 6-point plan to deliver improved performance, and these are being worked on simultaneously and at pace. So the first is achieving the uplift. We're on course to recruit the government target of 453 new police officers across the force. Not all forces will achieve this. We'll also be recruiting an extra 200 members of police staff who also fulfil critical roles in delivering a variety of services to the public. What that means in real terms is that we're actually recruiting 1,300 new police officers due to leavers through retirement and such like. So it's a huge challenge for the force. Number 2 is rebuilding investigations, also commonly known as CID. There is a significant shortfall in qualified detectives nationally, and we're no different in Avon and Somerset. This is being remedied by various means and is an improving picture. But as a rapidly expanding organisation, we have to manage our growing pains. For example, because of the shortfall of detectives, other departments such as response, ourselves or neighbourhoods are having to deal with some of the cases which ideally would be dealt with by detectives. The level and complexity of crime that we deal with on area is higher than we would like, but that will improve. Filling an additional 453 officer posts, as I've said, means recruiting 1,300 new officers. In a couple of years' time, I think something like 50 or 60% of our officer numbers will have less than 3 years' experience, which is a real challenge for us. Next is leading the cultural change, whereas I honestly believe that Avon and Somerset is in a much better place than some other forces. We would have our head in the sand if we didn't acknowledge that the problems exist and we need to tackle them. On a force level, we're leading with initiatives such as Race Matters. This is not who we are, and that regards misogynistic behaviour within the workplace and beyond. All of the leaders in the force have had cultural intelligence training. Lots of other things going on in the force under the Chief's plans. But what I can assure you of is your local policing inspector that I will do all I can to root out this just horrible, toxic, disgusting behaviour that we see. Next is developing our leaders. In my mind, this links to the previous two headings. With a young workforce, we'll see many more younger leaders. I wish I could include myself in that. This, along with the need to drive cultural change, means we must invest in training. An example of this is the industry-leading Leadership Academy within the force, which trains and develops leaders to a national standard, and something I've personally benefited from. And finally, creating capacity. Even as Somerset leads the country in our technological ability, we use AI, robotics and data, and we clearly understand where our demand lies, and this allows us to make the best use of our resources, and we relentlessly seek ways to improve efficiency in our processes in order to free up time for our officers, and that we do feel tangibly on the ground. So, moving to a local context. So Mendip is an area of itself. It's served 24/7, 365 days a year by response officers based centrally at Shepton Mallet. They'll cover from Frome down to Wells Street and Glastonbury on the other side. 5 teams, 1 sergeant and about 8 PCs on each. And they are the officers, if you call 999, that would generally come out and attend to your needs. There's challenges there at the moment because the numbers are really short with the trainees coming through. We're seeing far fewer than 8 constables on duty at any one time generally on response, and that has an impact on my team having to pick up the slack, which means we're able to do less community policing than we would like. Apologies. There we go. So the Mendip neighbourhood team, my team, 2 teams across 4 stations, east, which is Shepton Mallet and Frome, and then in the west, Street, Wells and Glastonbury. Myself, 2 sergeants, 2 PCSO supervisors, 11 PCs, about 25 PCSOs, and antisocial behaviour team, and a licensing officer as well. They're formidable. I'm very proud of my team. They work incredibly hard, and their ethics and values are they're fantastic. And then we can call in specialist support when we need to, mostly based at Bridgewater, traffic, firearms, operational support, mounted section, dog section, and the like. And you'll recognise probably, might be a bit, yeah, we can see them just about some of the areas and wards on there, and then the response station in the centre and the neighbourhood bases around the outside. So we've got pretty central and decent coverage. And the neighbourhood teams, that's how they're split. I've put the most important one in bold, of course, Frome. 3 PCs, Kaylee, Victoria and John, are all very experienced, very good officers, and a great team of PCSOs as well. And you probably have had dealings with them at some point in your professional capacities. And I think we have 1 vacancy at the moment for a PC at Shepton Mallet, but otherwise we're pretty well staffed. It's not too bad. So in neighbourhood policing, oh, my graphics have gone off there, apologies. On neighbourhood policing, our work is defined in 6 areas. This is a national model. Our first is problem solving. We work on complex, multifaceted problems which impact on the quality of life of our communities. We use a problem solving framework. We work with partners to put measures in place to solve these problems. That may be something fairly low level, like a neighbourly dispute. It can be something much broader, like antisocial behaviour. In a park, Victoria Park, we had some problems last year, and we look at it from a problem-solving point of view to prevent these things from continuing. Number 2 is investigation. The team carries crime investigations. That's what we're ultimately here to do, is try and solve and detect crimes. In support of our response colleagues, we do respond to 909 calls and priority calls for assistance from the public. Engagement. We build relationships, work in partnership and improve public confidence. We engage with the public through beach surgeries, for example, with voluntary and community groups such as schools, Community Speedwatch, and with other statutory partners such as the councils. And through our work, we come across a good number of vulnerable people, be they children being exploited, domestic abuse victims, people who may be homeless, or those targeted due to a protected characteristic. We work with other departments and agencies to ensure such people are supported to a safer position. And finally, we help manage offenders in the community. These may be registered sex offenders, domestic abuse offenders, or other violence offenders, and we help manage the risk posed by and to them. And if this was divided up as a proportion of our time, this is where we would like to be, with a fairly even spread, but with a lean towards problem solving and engagement. We see those as our priority areas. Problem solving, because that's where crime reduction works. Prevention is better than a cure or investigating things after they happen. And engagement, because that's where public confidence comes from, and we can let the public know what we're doing, and we can listen to the public's concerns as well. But a pretty even spread. However, that's probably where we are at the moment, being realistic. A huge amount of our time spending responding to 909 calls and investigating the resultant cases that come from responding to those calls. And as you can see, that squeezes some of the other areas which we would like to spend more time doing. It's a growing pain of the organisation. It's well known and well talked about. It will get better, but that is the reality of the situation at the moment. I thought I'd take you on to some antisocial behaviour and crime figures for Frome, going back 2 years, I think, or 2020, 2019, 2020. The ASB, sorry, yeah, this is, red is the total, blue is the total numbers, and red is your, thank you, sorry. There we go, that's better. Yeah, blue are the actual numbers, and red is the average line. It's difficult to see what that actually means, isn't it? But what you see there is a fairly stable trend. Bear with me, because I know it doesn't initially look like that. Where the dip is in the middle, that's COVID lockdowns. So you can see the reduction in demand there. And then as everyone sprang back to life afterwards, and we all went a bit crazy, then it kind of tipped up to a peak again. Yep, bear with me. I can't remember where I set my parameters to, so apologies.
2019 on the left.
Yeah, January 2019. And
Today,
yeah.
right.
So I did that to give a period of kind of normal stability before COVID, to kind of demonstrate that into COVID, post-COVID. The dip on the very right-hand side is the last 6 months. I wish I could claim that was coincidental to my arrival, but we have just a lag in crime data recording, so you'll probably see those come back to slightly more normal levels, and I anticipate we'll be back to kind of 2019 levels is my view. It's a fairly stable picture. That, however, doesn't mean we're complacent. Issues and problems crop up, and we're ready to deal and respond to them accordingly. I'm not sure how this overlays with your wards. This is our beat areas for Frome. So red is bad, blue and green is good. But that is also on a sliding scale, because it would be redder than red in central Bristol, for example, in kind of high population areas. But just as a comparison, in the town, a lot has to do with the town centre. Shop theft, for example, wouldn't happen anywhere else, so that can kind of be out of kilter. So you have to take it in slight context. It's a bit of a crude map, but it just gives an example of how we can break down our data as to what crime is occurring where. And then moving on to our plans for 2023. So focus on problem solving, antisocial behaviour, and linked shop theft in the town centre. We've seen that rise a little bit from the summer through the autumn. It's kind of dissipated a little bit, mainly because of the weather, but we anticipate that might become an issue again as the weather warms, so we'll be prepared for that. Antisocial behaviour in parks and recreational areas. Sadly, that does come with the nature of that in any town across the country, but again, we'll be ready to respond to those issues. And the drugs market. Frome has a drugs market, it has drug dealing. Most towns, all towns probably across the country do, and we'd be naive to think otherwise. But that's not to say we must be complacent. We must develop intelligence to kind of take action against that because of the harm it does. We'll focus on public engagement, education, crime reduction, So engagement events, I'm changing the makeup of what we do. I might have some officers sat up in a library or a coffee shop somewhere, maybe speak to one or two people. I don't think that's great value for money. So I'm going to move that to high footfall locations, Frome Flea Market, the agricultural market, outside Frome, Wells, Glastonbury markets and such like. So we have public coming to us, to speak to us, to engage with us, and that will link to crime prevention advice. They can report things to us, but we'll have much higher level of interaction with the public and much better value for money in terms of use of time. That's some, excuse me, and then some internal things which I need to focus on. Staff sickness is one. For some reason, police community support officers in Avon and Somerset are not too bad on my team, but it is the highest in the country. We don't know why, so we're working on that as a force. And of course, if staff are off sick, especially long term, that impacts on the delivery to the communities. And prosecution file quality, this is where we charge an offender for an offence to court. It comes with a bundle of paperwork and the checklist that we have to go through to say whether that's a good quality package or not. Again, Avon and Somerset is in the very much the lower quartile nationally, so we've got some work to do there, and that stems from individual officers, individual teams upwards. So internally, that's some of the things I'll be focusing on. So that's a whistle stop really of Avon and Somerset and Frome. And if we have time, I'm happy to take any questions. As I say, I'm happy to take anything away, or if I have to leave my email and contact details if anyone wants to follow up with anything.
We do. Thank you very much for that. It was very interesting. Thanks, Matthew. Any questions? Your hand shot up, Trace.
I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the high footfall locations and what your plan for that. That sounded quite interesting, because people always say, oh, the police aren't visible enough or something. I thought that would be interesting to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah, of course. As I say, beat surgeries is something that the neighbourhood policing have done going back years and years and years. But when I arrived, I saw them being done in, as I say, libraries and coffee shops, and that's very nice and quaint, and they might see 2 or 3 people. And we would advertise them on social media and so on, but I just didn't feel it was getting us value for money. Actually, we've got a community contact vehicle, we've got a public engagement gazebo, we've got lots of crime prevention literature, panic alarms, all sorts of different things we can hand out, and just those engagement opportunities. So you can imagine the flea market in Frome on, was it the first or last Sunday of the month? I can't remember, but
First Sunday of the month.
First Sunday of the month.
From March to December, I'm a director.
My family and I come a lot and spend too much money there. It's fun.
It's the Frome Independent, it's not a flea market.
Sorry. Yeah, I wrap my knuckles. But the number of people we have attending that, if we have had a stall there, and even if a couple of PCSOs, it doesn't take a huge amount of resourcing, but spend 3 or 4 hours there, we probably speak to hundreds, thousands of people maybe, and each interaction is crime prevention advice, or taking a report, giving reassurance, getting information intelligence. So I think a really effective way of engaging for the sake of a few hours work.
The lady over here, then Nick, then Fiona, Mel, Anita. I'll remind you of that order. Lady over there.
Hi.
Make sure it's switched on.
Hello. My name's Caroline Blake. Is that still switched on? It's not, is it?
A bit closer to your mouth.
Sorry, my name's Caroline Blake. One of the questions I've got on your one of the first slides, you said that you had the ABS antisocial behaviour team. How many people are in that team? What kind of skills do they have? And how can general public or people serving in services in Frome connect with them?
Absolutely. So I line manage the antisocial behaviour team. They cover the whole of East Somerset. We've got a supervisor in that department, a full-time police officer, a nearly full-time member of police staff, and we have a vacancy which we're just recruiting into. Their functionality comes from reports from the public made through 101 online. I will plug online reporting instead of spending ages on hold to 101. If it's not an urgent matter, our online reporting system is actually really effective and efficient and will come through to the neighbourhood teams. It doesn't disappear into the ether. If you report antisocial behaviour, depending on the nature of it, depending on threat, harm and risk and what else is going on in the area, Officers may well attend, not always, but they can. If they don't, that report still gets taken. It filters through to the neighbourhood team and the antisocial behaviour team. So every antisocial behaviour incident that's reported is reviewed by the neighbourhood policing team and is reviewed by the antisocial behaviour team. The function of the antisocial behaviour team is not public facing. They are the experts in their field. We intervene post-incident with antisocial behaviour interventions on a laddered system. So an antisocial behaviour perpetrator would initially get a level 1 warning letter, a level 2 warning letter, a level 3 warning letter. Would then develop into a community protection warning, which gives them a list of conditions you must not or you must. That is not an offence to breach, but if it does get breached, it's up to a community protection notice. That does become an arrestable offence. If that continues to be breached, we step it up to a community behaviour order, formerly an ASBO. And so it is that laddered and runged approach. They know by name the top 10, 20, 30 antisocial behaviour perpetrators across the area. They have flags, so if any officer inputs searches on that person, deals with that person, they know and they're on it. And so we don't just deal with the prosecution of criminal offences, because antisocial behaviour can be when no criminal offence has been committed. Littering, loud shouting, kids causing havoc in a park, not criminal matters, but still causing an impact to the community. And so we can follow up with antisocial behaviour interventions, whereas years gone by, if it wasn't criminal, there was not much we could do. They're really effective and do a lot of unseen work, which really has a benefit and impact. And we refer kids, for example, to youth offending team, diversionary courses, lots. I'll be happy to give you some more information offline if that would be of help.
Thank you. Thanks. Nick, then Fiona.
Evening, Matt. Some of you may know, I'm sorry, Nick Dove, Town Councillor and responsibility for the town centre in some ways. Matt and I, since he's joined this area, have met frequently, which has been great, and that's following meetings that set up by Paul and Chris and now Rob. But the most important thing, I think, the change is that you've been very proactive in your role. When things have happened, you've made contact and just let us know, so we can actually be part of that extended team of helping with public safety and confidence in what's happening. So thank you very much for that. Just a couple of things. One is the issue around, Tracy mentioned it a bit about visibility and stuff like that. It used to be a bugbear of me when I was in a similar role years ago, is this patrolling in pairs. I mean, even if I go in a supermarket and there are two of the staff together, I'm less likely to speak to them. PCSO should, it's not dangerous to walk around on their own, and it just makes it easier for people to engage. We have figures where the highest footfall areas are in Frome. I can tell you that, Chair. We have counters that actually measure the amount of people coming in and out. And the last thing is, I know absolutely how challenged you are with your numbers and the experience and so on, but a lot of publicity recently about the action that is not taken when crimes happen, and burglary was a particular focus. I know we have high burglary, but we do have quite a bit of town centre thefts, and they can be really serious for people. And I think it's really, really important that victims are told what actions police have taken and kept informed of progress. I'd just be grateful if you can keep an eye on that, please, Matt.
Yeah, all duly noted, and I meant what I said at the beginning in terms of working together with partners such as your good selves, because that flow of information is really important. If your footfall figures tally with our crime plans, patrol plans, we know we're doing the right thing. So that's fantastic information. Burglaries, you're right, touch wood, we don't have a huge problem, but they do occur. I've had family members that burgle, and it's the most horrific crime. It's a personal invasion, and we will, the neighbourhood team, follow up on all and send all burglaries. And visibility, yeah, absolutely. The team are really good. It's a big town, they're few in number, but they are out hour after hour. We always have little competitions with our step counters of how many steps people have done in the day. So they are out there. Thank you.
Fiona, then Mel.
Hi. I really appreciated that you mentioned the issues in, as you say, in other forces around the country that have been all over the news, particularly the last couple of days with David Carrick. 20 years it was going on for, and 49 instances. I can't even begin to, it's horrific, and it's deeply embedded. misogynistic, violent behaviour. And I really appreciate that you have brought it up and that you have said that your reassurance that it's not in this force and that there is training, etc. But I just don't think that we can underestimate how much trust has been eroded, particularly among women. I'm not going to lie, I'm a youngish woman, and seeing a police officer would not make me feel any better in any situation. I would, if anything, I would be more scared by the power that you have and that you would have against me. And I just think it's a massive issue, and it's been, I don't know, I just think training and everything, great. More needs to be done. I mean, also, is there any specific, are we trying to get more female police officers? Is there a wider diversity of police officers? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying, please don't underestimate how much trust has been eroded.
And I agree, and I know, and it saddens and sickens me because that is not representative of the vast majority. There are problems with Avon and Somerset. We're very open with our disciplinary hearings, and there have been recent ones. An officer I had to raise an issue with was sacked for that kind of behaviour. I raised another issue, someone was disciplined. I won't shy away from it on a local level. I won't have it. My daughter is 6, going on 15, and I want her to grow up in a world where where she doesn't have to think about those things and think about her safety in that way. That may be too soon because she's growing up fast, but all I can do is continue to reassure that the overwhelming majority are good, honest, decent people in the force, and these people who have no right to wear the uniform, the majority of us will do all we can to root them out.
Thank you. Just 2 more quick, if you can, questions on this, Mel, and then Anita.
Okay, part of it's been answered. And I was going to say
Great.
thank you for your honesty on recent events. I'm a resident of the town centre, and these are 2 evening issues which I just can't miss the opportunity to raise with you. One is about modified cars, which are made to backfire purposefully. And once they're out, they stay out for several hours quite often, and they're all over the place. Cheese and Grain car park's very popular. So that's the first one. And that's really quite annoying for most people. And the second is that we spend a lot of time trying to get 20-mile-an-hour speed limit through the town centre. And particularly at night, people ignore it completely. Let's hope that doesn't come back and bite me personally. But actually 20 miles an hour is now acceptable in most towns. And having been in London recently, it's actually common all over the residential areas there. So just those 2 points, which I'd like you to take away. Maybe comment on the modified cars.
Yeah, 5 years I spent on traffic, and modified cars are a constant source of it. I don't understand the interest, but we're all different. So antisocial behaviour, not crime, but we have methods for dealing with antisocial behaviour. As I've already said, if you reported that online with the registration numbers of the cars, we would follow that up. And can follow that up. One massive issue we have is under-reporting. People think they won't or they can't do something with this. We can and we will. Actually, that's not particularly difficult to solve. Nothing would please me more under the, I'm not going to quote the Acton section 59 we call them, where we can issue warnings and then seize a vehicle. And you can watch a young man having his car towed if it's reported to us. So I encourage any reporting and we'll follow it up. And the other issue, 20s, I'll be controversial. I don't think they're as effective as perhaps first intended when they were brought in however many years ago. The intention was that they would be self-enforcing speed limits through road design, road narrowing, speed bumps and such like. They're now used ubiquitously, and I don't think they're effective. We don't have the ability to enforce all of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. In the Guardian, I think they refer to various studies recently where it showed about a 1% improvement in road safety. I'm not convinced by them. I think in using the right area outside schools and such like, I think they would be more impactful because they're fewer in number, and it would make the motorist think, goodness, there must be a reason this is here. But when they're used so widely, I think they're less effective. Controversial, may not be my forces view, but there we are.
Thank you. And Anita.
Thank you. Just thinking about the way people are now with this cost of living crisis, and I would imagine that might well lead to an increase in potential shoplifting. I just wondered what thought you've given to that, and whether there are any preventative measures or any ways of discouraging that.
Yes, I think you're right. The cost of living, we will see, when crime figures come through year on year over the next few years, acquisitive crime, I think, will increase, robbery, burglary, shop theft and such like. It's an unfortunate consequence. And we're already kind of have plans in place to think and deal with those sort of things. A lot of it is visibility. A lot of it is crime prevention advice for shops, retail shops, co-ops placing their highest value items nearest the sliding doors, for example. There's things that shops can do intelligently. Some frustrations we have, lots of reports of shop theft from certain larger stores in the town. Yeah, can we get the CCTV from them? Is the CCTV any good? So there's responsibility that the businesses have to take as well. But we will be there to follow up on those inquiries. But it's really frustrating when something's reported and then we're not able to follow it up because we're not given the information.
And one last minute addition, really
Just trying to get your
quick,
attention earlier.
really quick, sorry.
So I'm curious, I remember seeing previously what are the most common crimes in Frome. I couldn't quite tell in your chart whether you listed that, but I remember seeing one with kind of violent crime, but there was no breakdown of what that was. So I'm kind of wondering, what is that? Domestic abuse? Is that attacks on the street? I'd like to understand a little bit more about those statistics.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to take that away and give that a breakdown. But yes, domestic abuse, sadly, and that's the case really across the board, accounts for a huge amount of violent crime. The other is probably public order. So actually, someone shouting, effing and jeffing in the street, maybe after a few drinks, that would be counted as a violent crime as well, without actually any violence being given. So public order, and then yes, sporadic kind of instance of maybe pub fights, alcohol, fuel fights and things. But unfortunately, domestic abuse takes up far too much proportion of it.
Yeah, perhaps we can look at the breakdown of that afterwards. If we
Take
can
that
have
away.
that. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much for your questions, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, Matthew.
Thank you. And if I may, I'll slip away. I've been on for too many hours already. So,
No, you are.
but good to see you all, and I'm happy
Good to see you too.
contact you next.
Okay, before we move on to the decision-making agenda, we have a section on questions and comments from the public and councillors, including Mendippers. Any hands in the air? Nick, you're up first, then Martin and Mark.
Thanks. Just a couple of quick ones. There was a recent exercise undertaken by Mendip, which was talking about installing bike racks around the town. They suggested they conducted a comprehensive consultation with residents, local organisations and so on about where would be best places to put the bike racks. They then came back with a proposal, I think, for 5 locations, one of which was the bottom of Stony Street, totally unsuitable. The other thing, 2 other things about them, the design, they were called like penny farthing. So they were frankly ridiculous shape. I don't know how you could attach more than 2 bikes to them. And they also wanted to paint them in a colour called teal, which I'm not sure what that is. Might be this colour, but
No, it's a nicer colour than that.
anyway, it certainly wasn't matching the other sort of street furniture we have in town. Mine and others' views, I think, is this was a pretty poor exercise. And when Emma kindly sort of pushed back and reflected the views, basically they said, well, you're going to get nothing. What I've asked for is, can we not have the money they were due to spend on those bike racks and just give it to us, and we can then put bike racks. We need more bike racks. We can put them in the place of the town where we know they will be best used, and we can choose a design that matches the rest of the street furniture. The first point. A quick second point is, I'm really, really frustrated by the poor communication between us, or myself particularly, and Mendip District Council and Somerset County Council. For 7-8 months now, we've been trying to get an answer to do with some of the Section 106 funding linked to the Edmund Park estate and other areas in the sort of Keyford ward. Still no reply. Somerset County Council, I've asked questions about some transport roads issues, not even an acknowledgement or a response. And I think it's appalling that in this day and age that there's not a mandatory response time to email requests that come in to people who are paid to do a job. I mean, if they just acknowledge receipt of the email and then say, we'll come back to you within 24, 48, 72 hours. So I'd be grateful, Paul, if you could make a note of those 2 points, and if they could go to the respective organisations. I don't know if Martin from Somerset wishes to defend the transport, the highway side. No? Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nick. Yeah, useful points. We'll make a note of that and get back to you on the outcome of those. Then it was Martin, you were next.
I've got some updates if people want them. First of all, just saying to that point, just copy in the councillor for the area to anything you write. We find that we do get replies, but I've heard this complaint before. So copy us in and we chase it up and it usually works. Do you want me to report on the planning, the latest, do you know about what's happening, likely to happen with regard to planning?
And I think you might as well give us a quick update since you're here. Yeah.
An update, would you like one? Okay.
Yes, please.
Right, there's going to be area planning boards. The days when I hoped that Frome and East Mendip might have its own planning board are long behind us, I'm afraid. The planning boards are going to be set up around the existing structures of the district councils. So they will basically remain as they were. The only problem is that they won't be the same councillors, of course, because Mendip is disappearing in April. There will be 13 councillors on each, which means that half of the serving councillors in the Mendip area will actually end up on planning, and the others will have to be reserved. So everybody will be trained on planning. We in the Green Party will be, by the looks of things, allocated 2 places on that place, done by political representation on that planning board. So that's 2 places representing Frome at least. And I very much hope that either Adam or Dawn or both will be given the opportunity by their own parties to sit on that board. The board will be able to consider planning matters as before, but, and this is a big but, large scale plans like Selwood Garland Village will be referred to Taunton. And I think it's the regulation committee. The representation there will be from all across Somerset, and the Frome people, Frome representatives will certainly be in a minority when that decision is made. There will be scrutiny of planning. Currently, it looks like it's going to be combined with environment. Now, I'm chair of the Environment Committee, and the scrutiny committee structures, they're being restructured. The scrutiny committees are being restructured. There's only going to be 5 across the whole of the council, and that's a big reduction in what you had before, because obviously you had scrutiny committees with the districts as well. I don't know whether that means I will remain chair of environment and planning or not, because there's going to be a shuffle round. The Somerset policy is to offer scrutiny chairs to opposition groups. April is vesting day. Budgets are being finalised. It's an absolute minefield. They're drawing together the budgets from all of the districts, as you can imagine, and the county. It runs close to £1 billion. So don't ask me details. I couldn't give them to you. Obviously, officers are now applying for the jobs that are available. There's going to be an enormous number of cuts to jobs across the county. So the Taunton-centric jobs are now being advertised and filled. The local community network, the latest I saw a very quick flash up on a screen in an online meeting, suggesting that the Frome area, you'll know this, you've seen it, it's one of those that we preferred, isn't it? Yeah. That's it. That's the bulk of what I've got to say. Any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Martin. Any questions, Tracy?
Martin, you said that larger proposed developments would go to Taunton. Have you any idea what constitutes larger?
Housing estates.
Over a certain number of
no, I haven't
dwellings?
I haven't got that information. No. But it would apply to the town development as well. Saxon Vale.
That's kind of
Yeah.
where I was going with it. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, Fiona, yeah.
Stupid question. Why? Why are they going there?
Why are they doing it?
Yeah,
I don't know. Sorry. No, I'm not being facetious. It's I think if I was putting myself in their shoes, it's to bring certain. There has to be a sort of regulatory thing about planning. If you've got one council and you've got 4 different planning boards and they're all doing different things, it's not a good thing. They have to obey by the policy. Now, if you're doing planning, if you've got planning application for one house or a small number of houses, that can be dealt with on a more localized level. But when you have large scale, especially with the needs of, don't want to get into too much detail, but you probably know that phosphates are a major issue in planning, and Frome is quite a good area because we don't have the phosphate problem. But that phosphate problem and where we build it is going to be a Somerset-wide issue. So it obviously has to go back to some extent to Taunton. I don't like the idea very much, but at the same time, there has to be some sort of central governance and somewhere that if we're not happy with our area planning board, that we can go to.
Thank you. Any other quick questions for Martin? Phil, are you clutching that microphone for any reason? No. You want a question?
No, not a question.
Okay. Any other comments then or questions from Mark and then Phil?
I know a lot of you will be disappointed that your phone's not here tonight, but she has contacted me. She'll be back when it gets warmer, apparently. She wants to thank the Rangers for the work they've been doing in Foundry Barton, done a lot of good work there and continue to do good work. Question for Rachel. She's asked if she can have permission for a Coronation Day street party. Will we be giving advice like we did for the Jubilee and all that sort of stuff? Again, I'm sure it's on your radar. Thank you very much. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Phil?
Thanks. I just wanted to remind everyone about buses again, if I may. There is an article that Rachel's prepared and her team have prepared. There's some excellent work, which is coming out in the Frome Times tomorrow, with a cut out and keep timetable for the D2, new timetable from the 22nd. And some things just to note, the D2 will now run a late night service from Frome that will go through Road. And the last bus from the marketplace will leave at 10:25. So that means we can, Rachel and I have had discussions, and Peter as well, and Peter Travis from Somerset Bus Partnership, about encouraging people to come into Frome on an evening, and that will be something which could work, will work really, really well. So just to let councillors and anyone else, members of the public, know about that. Keep using the buses, and if you stand with a yellow high-vis jacket taking pictures of bus stops with a phone in one hand and a notebook in the other, the traffic slows down.
Top tip. I must do that in Marketplace one time. Anything else? Quick, Mel.
Just when Nick was talking about the problems he was having with the county of Mendip, can we ensure that in future, if a councillor makes those complaints, we get the details of him and we write and say the council at its meeting on was told this, so and give them a date to respond by.
Yep, Paul.
Because I think we need to use the power of the council meeting in a way that might get a response that we wouldn't be able to get in any other means.
Thank you, Mel.
Okay.
Noted. Okay, next item on the agenda is for decision, and this is around councillor allowances. So over to Fiona and Andy.
Yes, it's the famous double act. I'll try and keep this brief. There's a fairly full paper been circulated to all councillors. This council and IFF more generally have always been keen to promote diversity and inclusivity in everything we do. And amongst the challenges we face are barriers both to entry as a councillor and to effectiveness once elected. Longer term, we're keen to achieve even more diversity at the next election. And we've started moving in the right direction, although there's always an opportunity to go further. But what we've found since May, when we all came into these roles, is that the time commitment is a barrier to full participation for those with other responsibilities, those with the need to provide for themselves and those they support, or the need for childcare. if we want to make things happen, it's not just about these formal public meetings and the preparation for them, which I'm sure you've all done in detail. But it's time working with other staff, working with other councillors and the wider town population to ensure that we're hearing everyone's point of view. Fiona's been working closely with Laura to research what's possible, so I'll hand over to her.
So I'm going to be slightly more long-winded than Andy,
Sure.
as is my way. No, it's okay. So the starting point for our research was other town councils in Somerset, and there are a number that have introduced allowances for councillors, with figures ranging from £450 in Somerton, who have 11 councillors, to £1,159.71 in Yeovil, with 24 councillors and an annual precept of 1.27 million. While this was interesting and reassuring to see, we did decide to take a slightly different approach than these councils with our proposal for a number of reasons. The first is that Frome Town Council is unusual in many ways. Two of Independence for Frome's founding beliefs were ambition, the belief that town councils can do more than just the minimum that is required of them, and localism, that local people know what is best for their local community. As such, Frome Town Council has grown a great deal over the last 12 years and now has the equivalent of 32 paid members of staff, an annual budget, which we're hopefully about to agree, of £2 million, and an ambitious and wide-ranging work programme. This has in turn increased the workload and responsibility of councillors. And the second is that, as Andy said, we are also far more diverse than most other Somerset town councils. And I did a lot of looking at photos on websites. Other than Yeovil, that's the only one that comes close to us. It's, it was a case of trying to spot anyone under the age of 50. So as you can see in the room, and not anything against anyone over 50, but in terms of diversity, we've got councillors ranging at the time of election, 23 to 74. 3 councillors under the age of 40, 2 with children under the age of 5, 8 women and 9 men, and 11 working either part or full time. And if I've got any of that wrong, I apologise. It's all from what I think, trying to work it out. From the outset, though, we were clear that we wanted to keep the overall cost of the allowances down, and therefore there were 2 options basically: either offer a very small amount to everyone and expect everyone to accept it, which we felt would be a waste of money, as over half the councillors don't need or even want it, and for the other half it would be too low to make any sort of difference. The other option is to base it on the idea of equity, not equality. If equality is treating everyone the same, then equity is treating everyone according to their needs. We recognise that we're not all starting from the same place. As Andy said, there's some people are juggling a lot more, including childcare and the childcare costs. And for some, it is a genuine decision how much time and energy we're able to commit. And for others, it's not. As to commit more would mean losing out on much needed income or shelling out far too much on child or other care costs. So we're proposing that accepting it is completely optional, and based on answering the question, will accepting this allowance help me to be an effective councillor for my community? As such, and I want to make this really clear, there will be councillors hopefully voting for this tonight with no intention of ever accepting it. And we know that at least 50% won't. And it is this knowledge that has allowed us to offer slightly more than other councils, £1,500 a year, which post-tax will be about £100 a month. This is the equivalent of 10 hours at minimum wage, or just under 2 days of childcare. The names of the councillors accepting it will be in the public domain. Although I really hope that any councillor that honestly answers that question yes will accept it with no embarrassment, guilt or shame, and instead use it to have their voice heard and to be as effective as they can. This is not going to solve the problems that we're facing. There's a lot of different barriers that are preventing both councillors from becoming councillors and from being effective, but it's a start, and it is one small step we can take towards being a more equitable and inclusive council.
Thank you, Fiona. Any questions? Yeah.
Any questions, comments?
Mark?
Yeah, we raised this before. In the paper you submitted, it says co-opted councillors won't be eligible for this, but I understand, or I hope, there will be a similar allowance for those co-opted, because otherwise that would be less inclusive.
Exactly, yes. So there's lots of different allowances. It's all very complicated. This is the allowance for councillors that have been elected. If we were in a situation where a councillor was co-opted, we would put a motion before this council to do a co-opted councillors allowance. It's just a separate allowance. I mean, we could add it in now, but it just, for simplicity's sake, we just thought we'd go with this. But it would be, yeah, that would be the intention.
My second point is, if, as you've said, perhaps 50% of councillors don't take the allowance, does that mean the pot is then divided amongst 50% who do take it, or is it just not used?
We looked at doing that and we couldn't. That was one of the things that the bureaucracy said we couldn't do it. So no, it will be 1,500 per councillor. I think this is a trial. It will be a year. I think we don't know how many councillors exactly are going to accept it until we've had it for a year. So let's see. And maybe if it's fewer than we think, we can maybe look at doing something different next year. But yeah.
Yes. Actually, sorry, I thought.
Although you do project well anyway.
What happens actually if the more than your projected 50% do take it up? Because what happens if people go home and think, actually, I don't feel included, and I will take it up?
I think it just means we need to dig a little bit deeper into our reserves on the budget.
There is currently 17,000 in the budget that we're about to see, which is, I think, will be plenty. We are being cautious in this. So yeah, but yes, we would.
Can I just sort of make a follow up from that? If that was the case, then council would formally agree an increase or not. So it wouldn't just happen. It would be a transparent decision.
Thank you. Yes, Carla.
So as a comment, really, I think everyone in the room knows, for the record. So I'm one of the councillors with a child under 5, a 2-year-old actually. So under 3, if you have a child under 3, it means you don't get any free childcare. So if I'm to do any work during the day, that's work that I want to do without my 2-year-old there, other than grandparent support, I would need to pay for childcare, which is currently what I do. And also, it's not possible to claim childcare expenses as a councillor. So that cuts out a lot of people, basically. So I'm very grateful to Fiona and Andy for bringing this forward.
That was, one of our big motivating factors. Out of interest, district and county and unitary councillors can pay it. And it was a decision made in the 1980s that town and parish councillors can't. The NALC has been campaigning for a change to that for years, but haven't gotten anywhere. So somewhere in a room, there's a decision maker that basically doesn't think that it's worth having women councillors, to exaggerate. But that that decision is being held up and there's no sign of it changing.
Thank you, Fiona. Nick.
Talking tonight. First of all, I think it's a really good idea. I think it's brilliant. I think I really, really support it. And I seem to remember somewhere reading, if you put it into context, £1,500 per councillor. What does David Warburton, our absent MP, currently claim in expenses?
He is on a salary of £84,144, and in 2022 he claimed £258,468.55 in expenses.
Thank you.
And
Thank
out
you
of
for
interest,
asking that question, Nick.
I will just add, Mendip Council's allowance is 4,484 as basic, and Somerset County Council is 11,742 as basic.
Good info. Thank you, guys. Martin.
I hate to be defending David Warburton, but you've got to be very careful with expenses. That's his staff costs. I know he might claim things that you don't approve of as well, but the bulk of that will be staff costs. And it's very important to bear in mind this is an allowance, but would you be expecting, or do you have things like travel allowances on top of this as well?
The only expenses that councillors currently pay is for training and then travel related to that. So the idea is that would continue. There's also a very small amount in the mayor's allowance, which is for sort of flowers and cards and travel. Yeah, for that. So that would continue.
Thank you very much. Tracy?
Caroline, is it? Yes. I think it's a very good question, what happened if everybody did take that. And I think one of the huge advantages in being a relatively small town and knowing each other quite well, we've had these conversations as councillors between us, but I think that the level is set as such that it would be helpful enough for something like childcare, because it's going to happen sometimes, but not all the time. for someone like me, I was kind of categorically told really that you weren't really needed for daytime things. So I thought that was going to work for me. So there have been odd occasions, I'm a freelance person, where there's been a very important meeting. There was an arts strategy meeting that was quite some distance away. It was quite a long meeting. I would have had to lose an entire day's pay to do it. And I'm a freelance person. And so I don't think they come up very often, these things, but I think it's probably set at a level that's helpful for people to be able to make a decision, to make themselves work better as a councillor, perhaps. I don't think it's at a level that would be, I don't know about anybody else, but wouldn't be tempting enough for me to want to do it, to be a councillor for that reason, but enough to think that I wasn't losing out from it. And I think that's probably quite important. In the same way that if you, I don't know, if you go somewhere and there are complimentary biscuits with the tea and coffee, you don't always take them, you only take them if you're hungry. I think maybe it works like that.
That's an excellent analogy. And we'll wrap that discussion up. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good closing line for that one. Thank you, Andy and Fiona. Thanks everyone for your contributions. We've got to have the vote now on this one. So the recommendations are: introduce an optional councillor allowance of 1,500 per councillor per year, delegate responsibility to the business manager to set up and administer the allowance for all councillors who choose to claim. Can I have someone to propose? Nick, someone to second? Fiona, everyone in favour?
That's unanimous.
Unanimous, well done. Okay, another decision coming up, and this is over to Mel for an update on the progress of the football club and to look at approving additional expenditure.
Just before I start on my half-hour speech, some of you will know that next week we're going to appoint a guy called Vince Parker to be head of the Community Benefit Society. He's a businessman. Well, he's just retired. I lived in Frome for quite a long time, sportsman. He had a very bad stroke last week, so he won't be taking that position. And I just hope that we could perhaps send him a card from the council.
Definitely,
just to say thanks very much and hope he gets well soon.
He's got an excellent reputation. He's a friend to a friend, so it's a real shame that that's not going to happen. And of course, we wish him and his family all the best.
Okay, I seem to be getting to be a regular about this football club at these meetings. It's not of my volition, I can tell you. This is, I've said elsewhere, this has probably been the most complicated set of negotiations that I've undertaken while I've been with the town council, and they're not quite over yet. So just a slight introduction. Setting up the CBS was not envisaged at the beginning of this project. Nobody mentioned the words Community Benefit Society at that point. We're convinced and were convinced by the Football Supporters Association, the National Football Supporters Association, that this was the way forward, and has been successful for over 40 clubs. And I'm sure it will be here too. But what that has done is led to those complex negotiations, which I've just referred to, and unfortunately some extra expenditure, which I'm just going to talk about. So the two areas that are involved here. The Community Benefit Society is on the verge of being established. I think if Peter Wheelhouse was here today, he might be able to say that it went off today or yesterday. It goes to the Financial Conduct Authority, who have to approve it. They will have the 20-page model rules, which is more than our standing orders, which we tailored to the unique circumstances in Frome. They say that the Financial Conduct Authority will be quite quick because they've seen these model rules before, so that could be agreed in a matter of weeks. I've heard that before. It's now obvious, I think, to everybody who's been involved that it's extremely optimistic to expect a newly formed bunch of volunteers who will run the Community Benefit Society, will be the board of the Community Benefit Society, however talented, to pick up all of the ins and outs of the setup, especially as the next few months are going to be the most intensive period. I don't think it's possible for a group of people like that just to take it up. So what we're recommending is that we put 16K aside to pay for a consultant to support the interim chair, which has already been identified, and to take over some of the administration, the research, and give expert advice on community matters to the CBS. This will probably take the equivalent of 2 days a week for the next few months. Okay, so that's the first one, to employ that consultant. Secondly, we're edging closer to taking up our option to buy the ground for £1. This has been an extremely tortuous process with delays not of our making and still not completely worked out. However, we do need some legal advice to make it happen. And to prepare a watertight short-term lease for the football club till probably till the end of the season, but it might be from a little bit longer than that, and then a longer-term lease, probably up to 20 or 25 years, to the Community Benefit Society. We also are going to need assurances from some recent expert advice on the health and safety and fire issues related to the ground, because some of them don't seem to have been updated for a while. So we're recommending that we put 20K aside for this work to be completed too. We probably won't need that much, but it's as well to have a figure that we can work with. We can't really expect the club to take this up. They genuinely have no funds left. They've taken some extremely difficult decisions over the last few weeks, particularly relating to players. But that should ensure that when this season is over, the balance sheet will be balanced, which is a good start for the Community Benefit Society. So that's it, the two recommendations, I think.
Going to be on the screen very shortly. Thank you very much, Mel. So to approve the recruitment of a consultant to support the setup of the Frome Town Community Benefit Society to incur up to £16,000 for this purpose using our new projects budget. We'll vote on them both at the same time. Point 2, to approve expenditure up to £20,000 for further legal expenses and risk assessments to be financed from the Saxon Bale Legacy earmarked reserves. Somebody want to propose? Upside down, and you're proposing, Anita? Yes. And then Philip seconds, and everyone in favour? Looking good. You know. Great. Thank you very much, Mel. Then another decision, and this is to approve processes for the substantial grant scheme for 22, 23, 24. Kate?
It's kind of any questions, I think.
Okay.
But I'll just give you a really, really quick run through. We've discussed this at the grants group, of which many of you are members. We have discussed this also in the poverty working group. So I think most of you have been party to these conversations. Essentially, and this is building on a previous council meeting towards the end of last year, where it was in August, where councillors agreed that the substantial grant fund would be deployed specifically to projects which would have a positive impact for residents in terms of cost of living. What we didn't do at that stage was define the process. We have had various conversations about it, and we just need to cross the T's and dot the I's and confirm that you're happy with that process for the remainder of this year. And for next year's grants, we won't be having the community grant round next year. We will have the substantial grant round running like this, and we will have the Mayor's Fund. So we can probably move to the recommendations unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Kate, Fiona?
I don't want to seem a bit one note tonight, and sorry in advance, but there's nothing in the terms and conditions around accessibility, inclusivity, discrimination, etc. I'm just wondering whether it was ever considered of putting in a couple of lines, whether that's something that you feel would be.
The terms and conditions and the application form are a slightly amended version of a previously co-designed application process that we did during lockdown, so maybe a couple of years ago, with residents, with interested parties, and with councillors at the time. No, we haven't included anything around equalities, and we potentially could, and it could just be a checkbox that we include in there to say that people will adhere to ensuring equality of opportunity for all residents.
I think
words to the effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think words to the effect of something like that, if we're giving money to an organisation, I think my personal feeling is that there should be a bare minimum in terms of, yeah, something that shows that they have at least considered it. We say, you know, non-party political and non-profit making, but to me, it just feels that there's something missing in terms of values. And I think also particularly in terms of accessibility, obviously there's, you know, there's not necessarily people can do a lot, but it feels like it's important that people have considered it.
Fine, I think that would be an easy thing to put in the application form and the terms and conditions.
So do we need to vote on that as an amendment then?
I suggest we just make a minute on that because it's relatively easy and minor, and unless there's a kind of consensus against that within the room. Yeah, so we'll just make sure there's a minute that would update the terms and conditions.
Thanks. Carla?
It's just a comment really, and I don't know if it needs to be in the recommendations, but one thing we also agreed was there would only be one funding round for the 23-24.
So we didn't, what I think we agreed, and the way we've laid out here, is that it would be, we wouldn't meet, so we wouldn't have a closing date. It would be an ongoing funding process, essentially until the funding runs out, which means we can be dynamic, it means we can be responsive, and it means we can meet the needs of our residents in quite a timely manner. So if you're happy with that, that's what's being proposed.
It's not that I'm necessarily unhappy about it, but I think I remember part of the discussion was that because it's the substantial grants and there's a higher limit, then if it was done in one round, then also the town knows and we know that if there are organisations looking for quite a large amount, if they come late in the year, it's and they don't know how much is left in the pot, if you see what I mean. And also we then don't get the opportunity to fund a much bigger project.
That was also my understanding of the meeting as well.
So
yeah, I just think that was
would it then make sense to trial the process for the end of this year, to see where we are in March, and to agree how we move forwards, and that decision making could probably be delegated to the grants advisory panel in consultation with the town clerk?
Yeah, I don't know if it needs to be in the recommendations.
Wouldn't that change the recommendation then, though? If we're gonna do a trial process, that would change.
Recommendation would stand the same, but it would have a time limit to it, to the end of the financial year 22-23, at which point we would assess how it has run.
So we are amending point 1 to agree the substantial grant process as outlined above.
For the period.
For the period 22-23.
Yeah, financial, yeah.
Probably need to vote on that, don't we? We'll just make a note of it. Yeah, please.
Excuse me, I suggest then the first recommendation just sort of ends as Sarah's just suggested for the period 22-23, and then a third recommendation review the process towards the end of this financial year and make any changes necessary at the following council meeting. So that would just give us we could also bring in any tweaks on terms and conditions at that stage as well.
Okay, so what's happened with those additions? Tracy?
How this is probably a stupid question, but how do we let people, organisations and people know that this change is happening and there's about 8 or 9 weeks in which it's going to happen and we're going to base an assessment on?
So the substantial grant fund has, and as it's outlined here and as we previously agreed in August, would be specifically for organisations that were identified through the poverty working group, that that we felt would meet an existing gap in services or a current need for our residents. And then a dialogue would take place between. So we have talked to some organisations and they've said, actually, we're going to meet that gap, but we don't need your funding. So thanks very much. But yes, we're up for working with you. Others have said, we're definitely up for meeting that gap, but we would need some financial support to enable us to increase our capacity, and we'll look to this to being sustainable in the future by. We haven't advertised it as such, and that's the significant change.
And where is the list of what those organisations are?
So those come out to they currently come out to the grants group for recommendation, if you like, and then it's how we're outlining it here is it will come to council for ratification.
I'm just wondering literally which of those organisations are.
So the two organisations that the grants group have recently agreed to fund are Citizens Advice, so they can have a drop-in virtual service here at the town hall, and the Good Heart Cafe, so that they can open a warm space every Sunday.
Sorry, I meant the people. I thought you meant you'd identified people who would, organisations who were allowed to apply in the next 9 weeks. That's what I thought you meant.
No.
I was just wondering how those organisations would get this information in case they wanted to apply.
So we've been doing that through the poverty working group and with our staff team and approaching the organisations directly. So we haven't listed them as such.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah, I'm very aware this was really meant to be a quick agenda item. So if we can keep it brief.
Just going to say, I would say again, my understanding was that the cost of living would be the focus up until the end of this grants thing, but then maybe not after it. It seems from what you've said, we're now saying that all the substantial grants next year will be focused on cost of living. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So we are going to vote on some slightly amended recommendations. Okay, Paul, yes, Paul, if you could read the amendments out.
So what I'll do, I'll read the amendments and then you vote on whether to accept the amendments, and then we revert back to all the recommendations as amended. So recommendation 1, tag it on to the end of that one, is for the period 22-23. Yeah. Recommendation 2 remains unchanged. Recommendation 3, which is a new one, says review towards the end of 22-23 and propose any changes to council early in 23-24. So I'm purposely put review as opposed to anything more specific, because then it just broadened it out to making sure that we can change anything you like in a few months.
Okay, to accept those proposals, can somebody propose? Andy, seconded by Anne. Everyone in favour of the amendments? Yes. Okay, and then somebody to propose the recommendations. Carla, seconded by Nita. Abstain, sorry. And then voting on the recommendations themselves. Andy, promote. What's the word? It's gone from my head. Proposing. Fiona seconding, and everyone agreeing. Tracy also abstaining.
Sorry, can I just check who proposed and who seconded it?
Andy and Anne.
Andy and Anne, and then
And
Carla
then
and Anita. But
Carla and Anita was the first one. And then Andy and, oh God, I can't remember. Andy and Fiona, I think it was that one. This one.
Got that.
Amendments were first by Andrew, second by Anne Mills, agreed by the director Tracy abstaining. All of the recommendations proposed by Carla, second by Anne,
Yeah.
agreed by the director Tracy abstaining.
Yeah. Well, okay with that? Well done. Thank you very much, Laura. Okay, thank you, Tick. Next item is going to be Paul, Sarah and Anita. Another decision, and this is about approving the work programme, looking at staff chart, budget and precept demand for 23-24. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you. I just want to set the scene really for the work programme and the budget. When we first began this new administration, we were yet again 17 independent councillors recruited by IFF. 10 of us had never been, or 10 people had never been councillors before. So a lot to do really. We began by putting together a list of priorities that we believed needed urgent attention and would best serve the town. And we also thought about our values and what was important to us, things like openness, honesty and transparency, about being very fair and inclusive, and about being a council that engages with people and encourages participation. Before I take you through the main items we're going to be focusing on, I would like to pay tribute to all my councillor colleagues who got involved in the work programme and the budgeting and what have you, as well as those people like Paul, Peter and Sarah and the team on the council who all put an awful lot of work into putting this all together. I think there's no real point in going through the council plan in detail or the strategy because that was presented very clearly in November. And likewise, we're not going to run through the detail of the work programme itself because all that information is on paper for you to read online. So this is really just about reviewing and just cementing those things which are going to be our prime areas of focus, which are protecting community assets, primarily at the moment, of course, the football club, reducing poverty and the cost of living crisis that we need to really focus on, revitalising the town centre, nurturing our green parks and spaces, improving planning and delivering affordable housing, agreeing a unitary deal with the incoming new Somerset Council, and responding to the climate and ecological emergency. The other aspects, of course, that we need to be mindful of when we're doing all this is about participation and inclusivity, about mental health and well-being, and about respect and civility. And I don't need to tell you, I'm sure that an awful lot of this work is already ongoing. And that's really thanks to the dedication of all those councillors involved and the staff at the council who are working with them. Now, as you'll know, we offer grants to many local groups and organisations. And this year, as we've touched on already, much of that budget will be spent supporting our work on reducing poverty, which I hope you'll all agree is the right thing to do at the moment. There will be still substantial amounts to apply for, as Kate has covered in her talk just now. But bearing in mind that we're just beginning a 5-year term, we've obviously got no way of knowing what difficulties or opportunities may crop up along the way. So we've started work in these areas, creating plans that cover us for just the first couple of years. After that, we're going to review where we are, and hopefully we will have made a fair bit of progress in most of these areas, and maybe enough to introduce some new areas of focus for us. But this unpredictability for the future is also considered in the work programme and in the budget. Who knows what we might be faced with? So we've built in some financial leeway so that we will be able to respond quickly to any emergency that might hit us. We've drafted the proposed work programme for the next year to deliver on the council plan, which is the strategy that we set. And this proposed budget enables us to deliver that programme. In order to provide the flexibility we will need and to be able to address the urgent challenges facing our community, you'll see that it's proposed to set a precept of 4.9% increase to this level of council's portion of the council tax. Now, this is far below the current level of inflation, and it means that while being ambitious and responding to all these challenges, we have cut back in other areas in order to keep this increase as small as we possibly can. I hope you'll agree with the approach that we're taking, and I look forward to updating you on future progress as we go through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Now I think that we need to vote to approve that. Do we have a recommendation? No one? Yes, you are.
Are you taking any questions?
Yes. Paul,
I was going to stand up.
do you want to let Paul do his bit first? And then
Sure.
the questions at the end.
Unless I guess, Andy, there are questions for Anita. I don't look. So yeah, just to sort of highlight, as you see on the screen, there's sort of running through, and I'll do it briefly because I think we've all been around this quite a lot over the last few months. I'll talk about the 1 and 2, and Sarah will do number 3 there on the budget. So just to remind you, as Anita said, we started off, I think, obviously, with the next slide. Thank you. That you agreed in November. And you'll remember within that, there were grey boxes with specific actions. And that was our first thing that we slotted into the work programme, those series of grey boxes. We had other things in there reflecting business as usual as well. The work programme I've printed out on everyone's tables. This is the document we're talking about here. So you'll see that those grey boxes are reflected there, and the other things are business as usual, and some sort of clarification on some of the more broader actions in the strategy. So the layout of that plan, next slide, please, Laura. This is a snippet of just on the first page, but as you'll see, sort of each heading from the council plan, the strategy is reflected in the work programme. We see there on the screen, reduced poverty. The way you've laid it out is in 3 columns. There's the words, and then on the right hand side, there's the income and expenditure columns. So the big number there for reduced poverty, the budget allocation is 135,000. And then the first line under each section is the staff allocation for that, and then some budgets related to some specific actions. Not all actions have budgets attached to them because they, and probably going through the whole document, the majority haven't, because they are actions that require time as opposed to additional spending money. Again, just to put a marker down, the work programme is flexible. We can review the process that we're going through. As new things come up, we can make changes, we can cut things out, we can add new things. I just want to sort of make sure that everyone knows that this isn't set in stone for the next 12 months. The old adage about once you agree it's out of date, I think, is probably a reasonable assumption on this. We will be phasing the actions over the period of the next sort of 14 months until the end of the next financial year, and the managers are working on that phasing at the moment. It's unlikely that anything significant will fall out from that and sort of drop off the list. It's just we want to make sure that we can we do it in good time, and also make sure that nothing is too squeezed. Or can you flick onto the? So in order to deliver that plan, again, this table is, I don't expect you to be able to see that, but just look at the shape of it, and it's reflected on the tables as well if you wanted to look at it in more detail. So to deliver that work programme, this is the staff chart that I propose that is required to do so. It's actually really similar to what it is at the moment. There are 2 or 3 very, probably minor amendments to be made. There's the first one is about the an additional admin support to replace the apprentices that we'd allocated in the business department and in the open spaces department, and having a admin support shared between those two. I think will be really good value for money and take a lot of the admin work off the senior members of staff, who we don't really get good value for money if managers are answering questions that a more junior member of staff could make. So it's just changing the structure as opposed to really creating more stuff. The second ones are around increasing the time allocation of 2 members of staff in Kate's team, going from 2.5 days a week to 4 days a week. Again, that's reflecting the needs of the council plan was looking at, which was around a focus on unitary and poverty in the short run. And I think that little change might unlock an awful lot of time. The third post is a new post. The third change is a new post, and that is to create a bit more resources in the unitary area. It's to an extent an unknown quantity at the moment, but I think Max and I are of the opinion that we will need more resources in that area to really deliver what we want. And don't want to embarrass you, Max, but I'm very conscious that Max is having to put an awful lot of time into this at the moment, where actually it seems to me that we should be paying staff to do a lot of that work under the guidance of Max, as opposed to you doing it yourself. So yeah. So sorry if I embarrassed you there. So that was the thinking on those three things. So if you agree those, I'm really confident that we can deliver the work programme. If you don't, then we'll have to think again. Sarah, I'll hand over to you. Is it okay if we
questions at the end?
do the budget and then everything at the end, or I'm easy if you want to ask questions now?
A very small point about this chart. Nikki Cox is working 5.5 days a week.
Yes, she's really busy. I
Yes.
didn't notice the typo there.
Yeah.
The proposal is Nikki changes from 2.5 to 4.
Yes, but
There's a
she's
typo
also
in-
Nikki Cox at the bottom of nurturing open spaces, where she's doing an additional 1.5 days.
My apologies, that is a typo. The collective is 4 days.
Okay, including, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I always like to put typo in, see if anyone's read it. Was that Andy? Did you have a question now before we get on to budget? Okay.
Sarah, do you want to do yours?
I mean, I just checked, mine's about this chart. Should it now or later? My question.
You might as well go now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's to do the nurturing open spaces and the lead ranger role, which my understanding is we are struggling to fill at the moment. And I'm wondering why you think that might be, and whether we're not paying enough, or maybe that's, I'm aware that we've still got that role open, and we've got, in a budget, a certain salary allocated to that role. And I'm just wondering if not enough.
Obviously, we don't pay our staff enough. I'm really surprised you saying that we're struggling to fill it, because the closing date isn't for another fortnight.
Hasn't it been open since August?
No, we advertised, it went into the Frome Times, I think the first week in January. Just for... Great.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, do you want to?
Just a quick point on that. I mean, the reason it wasn't advertised until a lot later was because we were, if I'm right, if I remember correctly, we held it up so that the new environment manager could have a really big say in setting the agenda, the job description and everything else before it was done.
Yeah, so that was my confusion, that the space has been vacant since August, but it's not actually been advertised. Thank you.
Yes.
Any more questions on that particular chart, Nick?
I guess I have to be reassured by your emphasis on flexibility, because you mentioned unitary and the additional resource plan to go into there. Max, I'm sure he's really busy on there, but equally I could say for the town centre, there are hours and hours and hours spent doing the job that maybe Viv would have done before, and Viv's post is gone. So it's how we are flexible as we sort of evolve and move on, I guess is what.
I can't emphasize enough that if you as councillors want to change priorities mid-year, then that's what we'll do. There won't be any resistance from us to do that.
Okay.
Could I say something about that?
Yes.
So I want to make the opposite point. So, I mean, of course it should be flexible. And your point about, it's almost certainly out of date as soon as it's written is right. But quite a lot of thought has gone into this, and quite a lot of thought has gone into the distribution of this. And so I think we change only really if circumstances significantly change. If something happens in the town which causes us to reassess our priorities. I wouldn't want this to be so flexible, if you like, that we don't believe in it, that we don't really work with it. All of that. This gives us a really nice structure for staff, named staff and named councillors to work together to do the work and really do the work without kind of having to create lots of committees for it. This gives us a really, really nice structure to work. So
I absolutely accept the point about flexibility, but I don't think we're flexible lightly. We only really change when circumstances change, because this distribution, I think, right now is right. And quite a lot of work has gone into it, so I wouldn't want to shift it, as I say, lightly.
Okay, noted. Thanks, Sarah.
Can you all hear me okay? The figures have been distributed in two formats, as Paul has said, under the strategy headings and in the old accounting format.
I don't think you're on.
Okay, use that.
Every time.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
The figures have been produced in two formats, under the strategy headings and in the traditional accounting format. We are going to look to try and move towards the strategy headings and move away from the accounting format if that is feasible by the start of the financial year. There are three sources of income this year: the budgeted income from the town hall rents, some general reserve subsidy, and the precept. The total proposed expenditure is, as you've been told, 2.095 million, and budgeted income from the town hall rents, bank interest, and minus sales at Discover Frome and the front desk are 72,000. The subsidy is 39,000 from general reserves, and that will result in a balanced budget. The precept tax base band D rate, the calculations I do try and explain every year. I think you've all heard them at least once. So the amount needed for the precept is 1.9 million. That is divided by the tax base of 9,000 households in Frome. There are 13,000 households in Frome, but only 9,000 pay 100% of the council tax bill. 76% of Frome households pay less than band D. So the increase this year is 4.9%, £10 a year, or under £1 a month. The earmarked reserves and general reserves, we ask you at this meeting to approve the earmarked reserves for the beginning of the next financial year. They may change by April, but we will report again in May. And a report was distributed with this, with these papers. Andy, thank you for flagging. There's an earmarked reserve that has a slight error in it, which is the play equipment, and we did draw down about 3,000 in November, which isn't reflected in the notes but is reflected in the figures. Any questions?
That was my question.
Excellent. Any other questions? Mel.
On earmarked reserves, as you might imagine, Sarah. If you turn to the earmarked reserves, which are, well, most people haven't got a paper copy of this. So.
No, they haven't.
Yeah. Oh, well, you won't understand then. Numbers 348, 390, 396 amount to about 85,000. One of them is for signage for the sale of Mendip Lodge Hotel, which burnt down many, many years ago. The second is about Discover Frome, and then there's 34,000 in there, and I would imagine that we really want to have a good look at Discover Frome this year, so I'd like to make sure that that is retained but spent this year. And then the final one is my my bête noire, which is the database, the CRM database, which I don't really understand and which reappears every year, and I always ask the same question and nothing ever happens. So I just think there's quite a bit of money that could be released in some of them.
Okay, point taken on Discover Frome in the database. I'll come back to those. The signage EMR is already spent. We're just waiting to pay the bill.
Oh, good. I haven't seen any examples of it though.
Jane's not here to talk about that.
Councillors will be delighted to know, I'm sure, that the finger post project is the posts are going to be installed next month. It's not tomorrow, it's next month, and Jane assures me that will happen. For those who are very long in the tooth, that is a very, very long running project that has, for some reason, proven to be extremely complicated because it's got a highway involved in it.
Fiona.
I just want to pick up on the ERM 396, the database one. I said this at the work plan meeting that it's Ben and I are beginning to have, we had a conversation earlier today about it, and it's just an idea of a plan of something that would sort of fit in with that we would just like the opportunity to develop and then put before councillors
It's a sort of, we're going to have a meeting with Rachel and Kate next week. We just would like that opportunity. So can it not be spent until after? That is all we're saying. And hopefully there's something quite exciting that we can do with it.
Use it or spend it.
Yeah, but
I'd
we
say
would-
actually, first of all, we'll get the IT consultant in to review our software here before we can tell you whether or not we're going to spend it on Frome Town Council software. If there's another software project in the offing, that may have to either draw on this or have a separate request for finances.
Okay. With that, when would that? So that would be that's £5,000 was earmarked to be spent for to check the software here.
It wasn't.
Internal.
I would say it probably will cost more than 5. We've got to find the right IT consultant who has the sort of expertise, can come in and do a review of all our software and see how it would connect up. That was the idea of the CRM. The other part of the CRM was also to facilitate the fine directory.
That's what this.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah,
I
it is
remember.
what it would be about. So it does link in directly with what.
That's fine.
With what the idea is. We're not saying we want to spend on something completely different.
Okay.
It is very much linked in it, but just that there is an opportunity for there to be a discussion before anything happens with it about different ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes, that's a yes. Happy. Okay. Any other quick things on that before we accept or don't accept the recommendations? Okay, so we do all these in one. Approve the work programme for 2023-24, approve the proposed staff structure, approve the budget, approve the forecast earmarked reserves, approve the forecast general reserves, and approve the precept demand. Anyone to propose? Anita to second. Mark, everyone agree or not? That is unanimous. Thanks very much, and thanks everyone for all their work on that. Another decision, we're back over to you, Sarah. You've got a little segue into your next.
Yes,
item.
apologies that Hannah's unwell, but thanks to her work on the risk strategy, this just needs to be acknowledged, approved by councillors and signed by the mayor.
Okay.
Acknowledged, approved by councillors and signed by the mayor.
Okay. That's a surprise.
Sorry. We're using Zurich Insurance Group, as I might right. Do we know how sustainable their investments are, how ethical? And where are they paying tax? Are they paying tax in Switzerland?
I'm afraid I don't know, Fiona.
Can we look before, can we check that they are not funding oil, etc.?
Yeah.
Please.
Yes, I think that's a very fair point.
Suppliers of the local government market, and many councils look into the ethics of their operations, and they come out very well.
Okay, that's reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay. I did a very quick Google and got confused. And then the other point was in the risk register. Can I ask a question about that as well? 10 and 11, it was inclusivity or inclusion or something. So obviously it was really, as we see, there's unconscious bias training. Have all staff had this, and can it be rolled out to councillors as well?
Yes, we can definitely roll it out to councillors. It's an online short course. Yeah, all staff have been had it accessible to, yes.
Thank you. So we need to, but is there a recommendation? Do we have a slide to show, or are we just approving? Yep, okay, to instruct the chair to sign the 2022-23 risk register on behalf of the council and approve the risk management strategy proposer. Mark, second. All right, you guys, seconded by Ben Still. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Sarah, again, another decision to support using Section 106 money to develop the design for a new bridge linking Adderwell and Edmund Park.
Sure, the paperwork was circulated. You did have a presentation last year. We're just coming back to council to seek councillor support to apply for the S106.
Okay, so Mark, yes, Mark, and then Andy.
Thank you, Sarah. We saw this last year, didn't we? The design for the bridge. Is that the design that's going forward? Because there was a debate that time about the disabled access.
About the ramp, rather.
About the ramps, because it was making it an awful lot more expensive to do that.
Sure, I think it'll be further down the line. We're just asking for a few thousand at the moment to progress the design. It's up to 100,000 available in the S106, and at the moment we're only applying for about 12,000. But we really need to get on and spend it.
We do need to get on with it. I'm just concerned that if we can't bottom out the disabled access, and the bridge might not get built. That's what
If we, I can't tell you that detail, Mark. I'm sorry.
Okay. We'll come out of this consultation, no doubt.
Yeah. I know the ramp was going to be more expensive than the steps, wasn't it? But it was
Very much so, yeah.
important. Yeah.
What we'll do though, we'll emphasise the feeling, which is, I think, probably universal within the group, that having a ramp in addition to steps or instead of steps is a high priority on this site. It may be impossible, which I think was one of the conclusions that Roundfield were coming up with, but we'll emphasise its importance.
It would be really useful if we could ask them to make sure they come back to us with the final design so that we can approve it.
Absolutely.
Sure. Jane's words on this tonight were, we don't know for sure until more work is done, but hopefully in the future there will be funding for footpaths and cycleways, connectivity and all, and possibly from county via central government. The key thing is if we don't spend the 100,000 that has been allocated, it will go back to the developer. But at least if we have permission in place or some early designs, and when any funding is available, we'll be in a position to apply for it. So that's the push for councillors' approval.
Thank you, Andy. Then Richard.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, my position is that I don't support spending money on a ramp, on a bridge that isn't accessible. And I don't understand clearly from the scope of the paper whether we're spending money on looking at a design that is going to exclude 50% of the population.
We will definitely make that part of the brief.
Yeah, can we make a note of that? That's well, I think that's what Paul's doing now. That's specific needs. Richard.
I'm here on behalf of Friends of the Frome, who've pushed this for the last few years. So it's great that you're finally, getting a decision. I'm surprised that we hadn't made that decision already, but that's what Mendip wants. So I'm pretty sure you're going to vote for it. To answer Mark's question, those were just indicative designs. We're looking for, access for all, obviously, and by doing this you're going to allow a sort of project manager to take things forward and to push it forward. We've already got agreement from Persimmon to pursue the path to the bridge, which is great. So yeah, I'm just here to sort of say it's a good thing. It'll be brilliant. It's what we need. It's a really good access point, and eventually it will benefit an awful lot of people in the town. And if you need to talk about it, I'm available. Jackie Wheeler's been pushing this as well, but as Friends of River Frome, give us a bell, give us an email or something. We can arrange a meeting and push it forward, but we really need to secure this money. And I should say that it's 110 grand, I think, S106, but we're looking to get sponsorship from people like Persimmon and other people. So Persimmon effectively, by building the path, have already said yes. Acorn have done their bit with the wooden walkway on the other side. So, there's other people who can come forward with some money, but we think we probably need double this amount to get it done. But it's a great start. Let's get it finished.
Thank you, Richard. Andy, then Mel.
Thank you. Yeah, did I hear that correctly, that a ramp might be impossible? Am I hearing that right?
Yes.
Why is that?
Richard. Yeah.
So it's an incline. Right. Okay. Yeah, cool. Got you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel.
This debate has made me think, are we going to ask Mendip what other section 106 they've still got that apply to Frome? Because when they go out of existence, it'll get lost, I can assure you of that, if it isn't already lost already, that is. And also a lot of it will be returned to the developers if it isn't spent.
Sarah?
Yeah, we have put pressure on Mendip just the last week to get the table of S106s that we'd asked them for about 2 months ago. We got a table through this morning, which we didn't think was quite complete, which is why I didn't report it when Nick mentioned earlier. It was a good flag to put forward to other councillors, Mendip councillors, that we do need their support in getting S106 reporting from Mendip.
Okay, perhaps this applies to what I said earlier, that we might write to them and say that the council is really keen that, that it gets this information, because a lot has been lost over the years, and quite a lot of it has been returned to developers because they weren't prepared to release it to us.
Mel, I think that was the action I had from Nick's point earlier, but I'll certainly be writing on your behalf to do that. Not sure too much has been lost in previous years, certainly in the last decade, maybe before that, but I can't think of an example where we lost something, because we have been quite terrier-like on it. But when the Section 106 officer sort of changes on a weekly basis, continuity has been really hard at Mendip.
Okay, thank you for your question, Sarah. Thank you for the information. We need to then vote on agenda item 9 recommendations to confirm support and to delegate blah, 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 as it says on the slides. Nick to propose, Max to second. Everyone in favour? That looks unanimous. Good news, good start, Richard. Good news for you to take back. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, final item on the agenda. This is going to be Laura, and this is looking at approving the calendar of meetings for 23-24. Oh,
she's got one there.
You've got a little dinky.
So yeah, basically that, although there has been some talk amongst councillors, and I just think it was just to bring it up, if anyone would like to consider any other times for council meetings, thinking back to inclusivity of councillors and perhaps members of the public, whether you'd like to suggest a different time to include perhaps afternoon meetings, controversially, she says. Just throwing it out there.
Tracy.
I find 7 o'clock a bit early, but that's just me. Obviously, it's my majority. I wonder if there's any way of canvassing public, how they would, if they consider that's too late to start.
Later being
7:30 or something. I particularly found or find it difficult if I'm working in Bath, which I don't all the time, but you can't get a 6:10 bus back from Bath, get home, put your things down and get here for 7. It just can't be done. I suppose that might also be true for members of the public or other people because as we know, we're not overloaded with places to work in Frome, so some of us have to go and work elsewhere.
So there's a suggestion on the table about exploring, but not proposing to change the time to 7:30 for council meetings. I don't know what other councillors think about that.
Can I suggest that we use this meeting to approve the actual dates and then take a further discussion amongst ourselves and some consultation with other people about actual start times?
I like that suggestion, thank you.
If I may, the other thing that would certainly help me would be if in future years we got this published a little bit earlier. This is already clashing with some dates I've got travel booked.
Okay.
That's going to be really hard actually, because this is kind of 3 months before the first meeting, but what Laura has to do as well is wait for the county and have a unitary timetable of meetings as well to make sure we don't clash with them too. But yeah, we'll try and bring it as forward as far as possible, but might be difficult, but we'll try our best.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you, Laura. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that? So are we agreeing that we can approve the calendar of meetings for 2023-24 and propose the owner to second? Everyone in favour of accepting the calendar of meetings with a caveat that we'll talk about them offline? Marvellous, unanimous. Okay then, just to close the meeting then, thank you very much for your time and contribution to this evening. Enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you.